Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of What If Civilization Started Over. Today is the 33rd episode, and let's get right into this. Now, the first event that we will actually see is... Hold on, I do not know what just happened. Will be the Colombians getting their capital, and they will put it right there. Now, we will see the Dominican country get their capital, as well as all of the former German state countries. So, this country's capital will be right there. And then this purple Ontario country will have their capital right near that, Michigan country. And then this kind of smushed country will have their capital in their only major city, and then this kind of Alberta, Saskatchewan country will have their major city right there. Other than that, there is, I think, only one other country to need a major city, which is the purple Chinese country. And yes, they are. So, anyways, let's get right into this video. And we will actually first see up here, there will be a war in the British Isles. Now, what will happen is first we will see a breakaway from Pink France into all of England, and they will actually invade into, or they will rebel away in these few regions as well, which will cripple them as they already have been. But now they will start to push back, and around here they decide to call for peace. But before peace is called, we will actually see what happens next, as this purple country is trying to invade into all of the British Isles to claim it all for themselves. Now, we've seen this happen before, but the Scots have gotten used to it, and they have developed a strategy, which is really to just do that, hold out in the capital while they go around like this, and then they can just push back as much as they want to, and then they can cut them off and take, which they do. But now we actually see two separate invasions. One by the Irish into the purple English country, and one by the Irish into the Scottish country. Mostly in the north, though, as we see them take over two major cities and kind of squish the Scottish, but that will be before the Scottish start to push back, kind of again cutting off these countries, but not fully on the Irish front. So they will actually end up escaping. But now the Scottish see a perfect opportunity to invade the Irish, as well. The Irish have all of most of their army not in Ireland. They have it either on England or at sea. So after this happens, there will be heavy pushbacks by the English, as there will only be one spot holding out. And at this point, the Scottish have ended up pushing very far into the English country. So around right here, they will call for peace. And now, let's see what that peace will look like. And this is now the peace treaty of the British Isles. And as we can see, the Scottish just at least doubled in size, as they have now grown a lot stronger. And yeah, so they have just climbed up the rankings by a few places. But anyways, let's go on to a different area where it will not be a war. In fact, it will be the opposite. As by the opposite of a war, I mean there will be a union. It will actually be over here. Now between what countries? Well, this country will be in it, but will they do this? Will they do this? Or will they do that? Well, they are looking at all three. They're like, you know what? There's only one that we could really unify with, and that's, well, the original Indians. So they end up doing that, making them a very tiny bit stronger. In fact, that could have potentially made them weaker. But now, we're going to look at Tibet. So, the Tibet country has been very they have been very aggressive in all their invasions. And in fact, as you can tell, I need to update this layer a lot, which I will do after this video. But these guys are a monarchy, but they're becoming more like a republic planetist. They're becoming more of an expansionist republic. So, as that happens, we see them actually start to invade another country, being their upstairs neighbor, these guys. And now, these guys are not the strongest, but they are also not the weakest. But compared to Tibet, they are very weak, as they will fall very fast, but they end up holding out in this region right here that gets fully encircled. Now, why wasn't Tibet able to just take it over? Well, Tibet, as I said, too aggressive, as Tibet will officially have a rebellion. And this rebellion will stretch across all of sort of these lands right here. And not only that, but they have another rebellion over here in the south that will be in kind of the Myanmar regions, but also they will take over these lands, as well. The Tibetans have really pushed themselves over their limits, as around like here is where these guys are able to get, and they actually take some land from over here. Well, more than just some, but yeah. And then this calls for the full pushback of this country, and in fact, they start invading into the Tibets. At this point, they say, okay, let's make a peace treaty. And so, let's go ahead and see this peace treaty. And this is the peace treaty of the Tibet rebellion, as we see 2 more countries be released out of this. As we see that this first rebellion got a big chunk of land, and so did the second rebellion over in the Bangladesh regions. Also, this country up here got some lands, and then, well, Yushu obviously got a lot of land. But yeah, so the Tibetans are now very crippled, and they're probably like 30th? 32nd, I'd say. Possibly. But if we go over to here, we will actually see that the Brazilians will give away that. Now, why? Well, because their colony is starting to collapse. And actually, they're considering just giving their entire colony over to Hokkaido. And in fact, they decide that they will. So, yeah, there's now Hokkaido over here with more influence. And I actually just changed Hokkaido's color to a little bit of a darker green. In fact, I'm gonna darken it a little bit more even, as the really bright green was just hurting my eyes. But anyways, if we go over here, we will actually see that the Ontario country will choose to unite with a different country. But actually, before that happens, we have to see the Irish lose all of Greenland and stuff, as this will actually go under one entire country. So now we have the Nunavut / Greenland country. And if we go over into Oceania, we see that there's still some land over here to be discovered. But actually, at this point, most of the water in the world has been discovered. In fact, all of these lands have been. So it's really just this one area right here. And with that, we will actually see this one spot be the only area undiscovered, as they can't really find the rest of this water. And as they get to around here, there is boats coming. Then as soon as they get through here, gone. So yeah. But eventually they end up fully finding all of the water, which means there's no more use for the undiscovered water layer. And actually, as there's only one piece of undiscovered land left over here, we can also get rid of that layer. So, now if we go over to a layer we haven't looked at in a long time, the Sultanates have a very strong hold on a lot of like rivers and stuff, like the Nile River, for example, or one of these rivers over here, like this river that almost extends into the Caucasus country, and this one that does. But yeah, so looking away from those, we now have to see who the Ontarians unite with, as they will unite with none other than the Green American country. Now, why the Green American country if they don't even share a border? Well, technically, they share a lake border. You just, like, right there. Kind of, but not really. But yeah. So, we will actually see them almost get an actual, like, land border. But how? Will it be through New York? Nope. Will it be through these guys? Nope. Oh, if it's not them, has to be these guys. Well, then you'd be correct, as they actually invade these guys. Because, well, if they don't, they will have basically no connection to the Ontarians. So, RIP this North Michigan country, but now you are gone. And in fact, it's looking like one of the two big American countries could like end up doing something like that. Or on the other side, like that. But anyways, seeing this massive threat on their border, the Californians and Texans will decide that it is time to declare war on the Green Americans. But right before this war, the Green Americans actually ended up gaining a good amount of allies, as they gain these guys, like Virginians or South Carolinians, I guess. They get the DR country, and they also get these guys, the Albertan Saskatchewan country, and they also get the Manitoba country. Now, seeing this, well, they actually don't see it. Because, well, they hadn't realized. But anyways, so they now start the invasion against Green America. As the reason why the Green Americans made that alliance is because they felt like this would happen pretty soon. So, seeing this big push, the Green Americans will decide that the best thing to do is to make a spearhead right here as a bait for the Californians and Texans, as they're gonna do a very weird strategy, and that is to pretend like they're trying to encircle these guys, so these guys can encircle them. But this is actually so the Green Americans can just hide away. And in fact, I know that doesn't make sense, but the only region where these guys, the California and Texan Union, get to keep their front is over here in like the Georgia/Alabama regions. But seeing that these guys are on the border, Florida sends a lot of troops to push back against these guys. And now we start to see that these guys, which have the least defended front in this war, start to be invaded. Because, well, they didn't really think that these guys would invade them, as they only had like 100 troops on this border. No, 1,000. Yeah, 1,000. So, yeah, not much. And spread over like 50 bases. So, like 20 at each base. But, so, yeah, that happens. And now we will have to start seeing the Green Americans make their push. No, they did not invade that way first. But yeah, so we see them push into this major city with a very successful spearhead. And then we also see them spearhead to this major city, making them have a very strong front line, I guess, as they end up quickly taking over these regions. So, yeah, they are pushing very deep and kind of squishing the Texan region. And this calls for these regions to retreat, making the rest of this front line in this spot be invaded. Now, this war is so far not going good for these guys at all. So, we see them actually make their first pushback of this entire war. But at this point, they decide that right now they should end up piecing out, as well, they will obviously lose this war. So let's go ahead and see this peace treaty. And this is the peace treaty of this war, as the Californians / Texan Union takes very, very heavy losses in this, as we see all of this light green land go over to Green America, making them a lot stronger, and at this point, potentially stronger than the other American country. And then the Saskatchewan Albertan country gets a lot of land. But yeah, and that will pretty much do it for today's episode, as this is a short one, but that's okay. But before I end this video, I will actually do the rankings, which should have been done in the last episode. So let's go ahead and see what these new rankings are. So this is what the rankings look like, as the Iberian Union is first, and then the Sultanates are second. Persia is actually third. They haven't been there in a very long time. Ping China, although not very crippled, but pretty crippled, is fourth. Greece, actually, with their very beautiful and amazing borders, are fifth. And Brazil is sixth. Green America is now seventh. I just realized that Guatemala is actually Belize. And they are eighth. Ping China, ninth. Hokkaido, 10th. Germany, 11th. The Yellow Cassock country is 12th. Madagascar is 13th. Morocco is 14th. South Australia is 15th. And the Adriaticans are 16th. Now, that is all for today's episode, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.